Our staff who work in this environment, they would describe it as constantly working under crisis.
Over the last couple of weeks, we've probably had someone in the hall every day.
In this hospital, it looked like a war zone.
Patients in hallways, conference rooms, wherever there's space, overcrowding in our hospitals have become a constant crisis. A CBC News exclusive tonight about the state of hospitals in our province. Our investigation revealing that Ontario's hallway healthcare problem is now routine. CBC Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley broke this story and joins us live from outside of Toronto General. And Mike, you found that hospitals are now filled beyond their capacity, not just during the busy flu season, but nearly every day.
Well, Dwight, from time to time we've done stories about these awful situations of patients in hallway hospitals for days at a time, but I wanted to get the big picture of how common this actually is. So I got the stats for every single hospital in the province for every day in the first half of last year, and what it shows is that hallway medicine is now widespread all across Ontario.
This used to be an exercise gym. Now it's a makeshift hospital ward with no bathroom and beds separated by portable screens.
I'm just going to check your oxygen and everything, okay, while I'm here.
South Lake Regional Health Centre is a 500-bed hospital in Newmarket. Its overcrowding problems affect patients from the moment they arrive in the ER.
Stayed in emergency for probably almost 2 days, I guess, until they finally got me what you see here, these lovely accommodations.
New data obtained by CBC News show the hallway medicine problem is not just confined to hospitals like South Lake in the Toronto area, but has spread around the province. From January to June last year, all these hospitals were filled beyond capacity nearly every single day.
This was a pantry. It used to have a fridge and an ice maker and a microwave. This is not the optimal place to be providing care.
The alternative is leaving patients stuck in the ER.
When emergency gets backed up, they start to get worried that they can't assess people quickly enough to make sure that they can stay safe.
The emergency room at Richmond Hill Hospital. It's early afternoon on a weekday, one of the quietest periods for the ER. Yet there are patients in the hall and alongside the nursing station desk.
For our staff who work in this environment, they would describe it as constantly working under crisis.
To try to ease the overcrowding, the hospital turned this meeting room over to beds. 10 patients here share one washroom with no shower. Richmond Hill was filled beyond its capacity for all but 2 days in the first half of last year, more than any other hospital in Ontario.
All across the province, you have hospitals at extremely high levels of occupancy. And what we're seeing is that it's no longer just during the flu season, but it's all year round.
Anthony Dale recalls his visit to a Northern Ontario hospital in August, usually the least overcrowded month.
In this hospital, it looked like a war zone. There were patients up and down the hallway.
Premier Doug Ford has promised to end hallway health care. His health minister admits it will take years.
It's like taking an ocean liner and turning it around. It doesn't happen on a dime.
All right, Mike will have some more on this story. You can dig into the numbers for yourself online. Like, how did your local hospital make the top 10 of most crowded? Did it or didn't it? Just head to cbc.ca/Toronto for all the details on this exclusive report. The health minister is saying today hospital overcrowding won't be an issue should Ontario have to deal with the Chinese coronavirus in the coming days or weeks. Christine Elliott held a media briefing this afternoon to address how the province is preparing for the virus.
We have specific measures that will be in place, as I indicated before, to both detect and contain this virus. So anyone who is being tested in the future will be placed in isolation, and that staff will be given the necessary protective equipment to protect both themselves as well as to prevent transmission of the virus.
The Chinese city that's ground zero for the coronavirus outbreak is effectively being quarantined tonight, but the World Health Organization said it needs more information before declaring the outbreak an international emergency.
The decision about whether or not to declare a public health emergency of international concern is one I take extremely seriously, and one I'm only prepared to make with appropriate consideration of all the evidence.
17 people in China have now died from the virus. China is reporting nearly 550 confirmed cases. In the city where the outbreak began, flights are being grounded, trains and public transit halted in an effort to stop the spread of the virus. An enormous task considering Wuhan's population of 11 million people. The World Health Organization says it will update the situation tomorrow. There are no confirmed cases of the new China coronavirus in Canada, but health officials here are preparing for that possibility.
Oh, that's my girl, Robin.
Nancy Lee is flying to Guangzhou tonight to visit family.
So you'll be hanging out with your grandmother at home, so you don't really have to worry about that, but it's the airport, right?
Yeah. That's the thing. That's actually the only thing I worried about. It's the airport.
Guangzhou is a travel hub with air and train connections to Wuhan, the epicenter of the coronavirus.
So your husband is picking up masks.
Yeah.
You asked him to get like 50 or so.
Yes. So I'm going to be, every day I go out, I will have a mask.
Does it feel different when you have to wear a mask and you have to put gloves on?
Yes, because I wasn't there during the SARS, right? So that's actually my first time I'm wearing a mask. Back in China, yeah. All that to protect myself and also to protect so I don't bring this back to my family and to Toronto.
Wearing mask, I think overall it just people need to be aware and then protect ourselves.
Lots of people on China-bound flights have been doing just that.
We need to wash our hands. We need to wear the masks, and just be aware of the virus.
We already booked the ticket a long time ago, all planned. So it's a little bit annoying, but there's no other choice.
This family trusts that the Chinese government is doing its part to contain it, even though the number of cases in the country, as of today, has climbed to over 500 and more than a dozen deaths. With the first North American patient confirmed in the United States, nurses and doctors here are getting ready.
Triage is the most important part, right? Because we need to get those patients isolated right away. And so it is a vigilant screening at triage around the travel history and the symptoms and get them in the right room with the right precautions. I was here for SARS in 2003 and it was quite different then. And with SARS, we really didn't know what we were dealing with. We were trying to understand what kind of virus it was and what we should do to protect our staff. This is different, and I think people have to appreciate that it's not the same as SARS, it's not presenting the same, the numbers aren't the same, the death rate, the mortality rate's not the same. So as long as we keep an eye on it, I think we should be well prepared.
The numbers up to this point depict the Wuhan coronavirus as a less lethal cousin of SARS. But everyone, from travelers to hospital staff, have to do their part to keep it that way.
That was our Alicia Son reporting. In Quebec tonight, 5 people are in isolation being tested for the virus. The new China coronavirus has already been ruled out in another person there. Quebec's public health director believes the 5 tests will come back negative. He says they're being done as a precaution.
In a few minutes, I'm about to walk up DuPont Street and go for my, what I try very hard to be my quarterly check-in with my psychologist.
Toronto's fire chief's mental health message. Why Matthew Pegg says he opened up in a tweet today. That's coming up for you at 6:30.
A bit frustrated. I mean, the amount of money I pay for TTC and to go, it's a coin toss between which one's not going to work.
This is the second time this week that it's shut down, so I don't know. It's frustrating because TTC keeps putting up their prices, but the service isn't improving.
And it's not just about, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. This impacts people's livelihood. You're going into work and you say, oh, I'm held up by the TTC. Nobody hears that anymore, right? It's like the dog ate the dog ate my homework type situation. They have to do better.
Commuter chaos in Toronto this morning after Line 2 was shut down for hours due to a subway car derailment. It was a rough start to the day for many commuters in the West End. Tens of thousands of riders were affected by the shutdown between Ossington and Jane. Greg Ross joins us live now from Jane Station. And Greg, a lot of angry and cold commuters this morning.
That's right, Dwight, and those angry and cold commuters were forced out of the subway and out onto the streets around these affected stations like this one here at Jane and Bloor Street. Looks a lot calmer here now, but it was just chaos earlier today, forcing the TTC to bring in shuttle buses to get people moving. They had to bring in more than 100 buses to accommodate all of the people, and there were long lines to get on those buses, and of course it created many delays, and many of the people ended up being late for wherever they were trying to go.
Eastbound subway, westbound shuttle bus.
It was early morning chaos for commuters heading westbound on line 2 of the subway. That reaction pretty much sums up how people were feeling.
I'm really frustrated with the TTC. The communication is poor.
As many as 50,000 subway riders were forced to take shuttle buses between Jane and Ossington stations after a partial derailment of a subway train that was just coming into service from the Keele Yard.
3 of the 6 cars on the train had gone over the switch. The 4th car got caught at the switch. It had moved and jumped the rail. So it was just one axle off that 4th car that had jumped the rail, and only by a few inches, but of course that's all it takes once it's off the rail.
The train was empty, so nobody was hurt, but it did create a lot of confusion and made a lot of people late this morning.
Oh, probably an hour or so.
I try not to look at the time because then I'm just going to get a little bit more rattled than I should be.
This man says the derailment cost him his job.
My boss told me that I have to be there in 5 minutes or I'm fired, so I called him and I said I quit because there's no way I'm going to make it there in 5 minutes.
This man says delays on the TTC are just par for the course. In fact, he had a patch on his bag of a TTC streetcar with the caption, "Gonna be late."
What is happening right now? # Toronto.
This bakery owner tried to ease tensions, offering free pastries to riders waiting for buses.
People are stuck for how long? 2 hours, 3 hours? So just give them something to get by.
It took about 4.5 hours to get the train back on track and service up and running again. At a press conference today, the mayor expressed his frustration and vowed to pump more money into TTC upgrades through the city's new building fund levy.
The more we invest in making the system better, the better it's going to operate and the less likely these things are to occur.
Now, the TTC says that this derailment is still under investigation. They're still trying to determine the cause of it. Now, derailments like this one, they say, are very uncommon. The last one happened back in 2008, and they say that they're looking into the way that this one was handled in hopes of being better prepared if it does happen again, Dwight.
Crazy morning out there. Thank you, Greg. And those weren't the only problems TTC riders faced this morning. If you were on the 510 Spadina, you may have noticed the streetcar didn't finish its route. That's because a driver got stuck in the Queens Quay Tunnel. It happened just after 2 a.m. A driver stayed right behind the streetcar on the tracks as it headed into the tunnel on Queens Quay. It made it past the automatic gates blocking the tunnel, making it all the way down to Union Station before getting stuck. It had to be lifted up and carried out with heavy equipment this morning. There are no reports of injuries, although the SUV suffered some dents and a broken window. Since 2014, this has happened about 24 times, but it's the first time since the city installed gates in 2018. Back to those subway riders this morning getting pushed out into the cold. At least, what was it, around 0 to 2 this morning? It wasn't some of those minus temperatures we've had recently.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. We did have these winds, though, so that was a little significant that if you got into the shade, you were feeling that wind chill a little bit. But wasn't it nice to have some sunshine today? And that helped to warm our temperatures up. And they're going to be mild. And I'm not just talking about the daytime highs, but the overnight lows are going to be above seasonal. Looking ahead for the next, not just week, but the next couple of weeks, I'm seeing into early February. The current temperature -1. We do have those winds I just mentioned. These are the sustained winds, but the gusts at times have been more towards 50 kilometers an hour. So those will be backing off overnight tonight, and the wind chill is not quite as significant, but -7 is what it feels like at the moment. And yeah, all that wonderful sunshine and then the clouds building in as the day wore on. And this next system, I just want to show you the whole thing because it is expansive. So we have some of that snow into northeastern Ontario associated with it, and then look at all this rain as it extends all the way down towards the southern plains, and it is picking up moisture again from the Gulf like the system we had last week, but with the milder temperatures, this may be more of a rain or slush event that we'll be seeing. So overnight tonight, we keep most of this cloud cover, -4, feeling like -8. At this time of year, we should be at about -11. So we are really running on the mild side, even with those overnight lows. That's so nice to see. Into the afternoon, we are talking about mostly cloudy. In fact, I would say some sunny breaks may be a little bit hard to come by. 2 degrees will be our high for us on Thursday. I'm going to get into more detail on that system that's coming in and what we might see in terms of the precipitation that's coming and the timing of it for this weekend as well, Dwight.
You call that. After the break, 2 trials take their first big steps today. The accused, 1 producer, 1 president.
If impeachment and removal cannot hold him accountable, then he truly is above the law.
Opening arguments got underway today in both the impeachment of Donald Trump and the rape trial of Harvey Weinstein. We'll bring you the very latest from both coming up next.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Democrats are laying out their opening arguments today in the impeachment trial of Donald Trump. The U.S. president faces charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress as senators on both sides brace for the long hours and days ahead. The defendant, Donald Trump, is closely watching the proceedings from the other side of the Atlantic. Katie Simpson has more now from Capitol Hill.
Urging senators to leave partisanship at the door. Democrats are making their case to have President Donald Trump removed from office.
I have to hope that some, if not all, of the senators will abide by that oath and will hear us with an open mind. But even if they don't, I do expect the American people are watching, and I think the American people are listening, and they do have an open mind.
For the next 3 days, House impeachment managers, led by Adam Schiff, will outline what they say is a clear-cut example of abuse of power.
President Trump withheld hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid to a strategic partner at war with Russia to secure foreign help with his reelection. In other words, to cheat.
Since there will be no chance for exchanges during opening arguments, this part of the trial is expected to be less tense than what unfolded overnight.
Defies the law to withhold aid from Ukraine, defies the law in a dozen different directions.
You owe an apology to the President of the United States and his family.
The Chief Justice had to step in when a dispute over the trial's format became too heated.
I think it is appropriate at this point for me to admonish both the House managers and the President's counsel in equal terms to remember that they are addressing the world's greatest deliberative body.
The president was clearly watching from the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Switzerland as he had personal insults for the Democrats leading his prosecution.
First of all, Gerald Nadler, I've known him a long time. He's a sleazebag.
Democrats remain frustrated. They don't have any guarantees that new witnesses or evidence will be admitted, which they say is unfair. Most Republicans want a swift trial, though some have suggested they might be open to the idea of new witnesses and new evidence at a later point in the trial. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
It's been more than 2 years since allegations against Harvey Weinstein triggered the Me Too movement, and finally today, opening arguments began in his trial. The former movie mogul is charged with sexually assaulting 2 women. He denies the allegations, but more than 80 other women have also accused him of misconduct. And as Tashana Reed tells us, we now know some of them will be asked to testify.
Harvey Weinstein made quite the entrance for the first day of opening arguments in his criminal trial. No longer using a walker, the now disgraced film producer seemed confident walking into the courthouse.
Harvey, do you think you're going to get a fair trial today?
Yeah,
What makes you say that?
I have good lawyers.
In opening arguments, prosecutors used the words sexual predator and rapist repeatedly when referring to Weinstein. The assistant district attorney, Megan Hast, saying the man seated right there was not just a titan in Hollywood, he was a rapist. At times, they went into graphic detail about the victim's alleged assaults and said Weinstein used his power to silence his victims. Both accusers in this case were in court, including Mimi Haley, who alleged she was sexually assaulted in 2006. Weinstein's second accuser was identified for the first time in court today as an aspiring actress named Jessica Mann, who alleges she was raped by Weinstein in 2013. The court was told it will hear testimony from 4 witnesses to prove a pattern of behavior, other women who also allege Weinstein assaulted them. Weinstein's defense lawyers pushed back, saying they'll introduce evidence to prove the relationships with the women were consensual. They will point to what they refer to as loving emails and exchanges between Weinstein and the victims after the alleged assaults took place. Lawyer Gloria Allred, who represents one of Weinstein's accusers and one witness, says those letters don't mean the accusations aren't true.
The fact that there is continued communication between a person who alleges she is a victim after the time or times in which she alleges she was victimized does not vitiate or mean that there was no sexual assault.
7 men and 5 women are serving as jurors and will ultimately decide Weinstein's fate in coming weeks. Tashana Reed, CBC News, New York.
Still ahead, a personal message from Toronto's top firefighter.
A social media post by the city's fire chief is attracting a lot of attention today.
In a few minutes, I'm about to walk up DuPont Street and go for my, what I try very hard to be my quarterly check-in with my psychologist.
I'm Lorenda Redekop. I spoke with the chief about the impact he hopes he'll have. That story coming up.
First responders experience intense situations all the time, dealing with death and trauma almost daily. The city's fire chief wants people to know they can talk about what they are going through, and today he went very public about his own mental health check-ins. Lorenda Redekop explains.
I want you to know that I feel no shame or stigma or embarrassment, and certainly no sense of weakness in telling you that I have a psychologist that plays.
It's just a quick video on social media, recorded just before Fire Chief Matthew Pegg headed in for what he calls his checkup from the neck up, and it's taken off.
It's drawn a bit of excitement and a little bit of attention, and I think that's fantastic.
He wants to normalize taking care of one's mental health in a profession that traditionally hasn't talked about this, despite dealing with trauma all the time.
When I started, those are not conversations we ever had. I never would have said, you know, that really bothers me. It would have been in the back of people's heads, you know, you're probably not cut out for this kid.
But he says there's still a long way to go. He only thought about getting help a few years ago.
Some of the people that are closest to me here started to call it out for me. And I started to express repeatedly, I'm really tired. I'm tired. I'm tired.
Now he tries to go for a check-in 4 times a year.
I don't think it's any different than when I go to my doctor and they draw blood. I need the professionals in the lab to tell me what my cholesterol count is and my sugar count is. I can't see that or feel it. And, you know, for me this morning, when I sat with my doctor, I need his professional expertise.
Now he talks about it during every graduation for new firefighters.
And it is okay not to be okay.
This is something that is long overdue and something that he should be commended for. It's incredibly courageous.
Dilnaz Garda hopes this will help many first responders. Her brother was a Toronto police officer. He died by suicide in 2016. He'd previously been involved in a shooting.
During the funeral, when the other officers came to pay respects, they paid their respects, but they also told me that they were in their own dark place.
Now she tries to make sure officers have more supports. The chief doesn't want to make this about himself, but if he can help others, he'll keep talking. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
Fellas came in here, they were intoxicated. My staff wouldn't serve them, so they got very irate about that and caused a big scene, pulled the fire alarm, and took off.
If you're a restaurant owner and one of your customers pulls the fire alarm by mistake, you could get fined with $1,500. I'm Natalie Nanowski, and I'll tell you exactly how to avoid that hefty bill. That story is coming up.
Earlier tonight, our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley told you about how some health officials are raising the alarm over what they say is a constant state of crisis when it comes to overcrowding in Ontario's hospitals. Now, Brampton has declared a healthcare emergency over the problem.
Our hospital consistently is well beyond 100% capacity. For a hospital to operate at a decent level, that number should be consistently less than 85%. Often arrive to close
Group
doors.
Concerned Ontario Doctors was at Brampton City Hall today requesting the emergency declaration. They say patient needs in Brampton's hospitals often exceed resources and that elective surgeries are being cancelled because there's nowhere to put patients after the procedures. Brampton's Mayor Patrick Brown says the city's healthcare system is in dire need of funding from the provincial government. There has been a sharp rise in the number of confirmed cases of the new China coronavirus, but the World Health Organization is delaying a decision on declaring a global health emergency.
Our experts are now on the ground as we speak with Chinese experts assessing the situation, and that's why we're saying we will have more information and we will reconvene tomorrow.
But China isn't waiting for the WHO to declare an emergency. The city where it originated, Wuhan, is being effectively quarantined. It is closing all transportation networks, including subways and buses. All outbound flights have been canceled, and residents are being told not to leave the city. They are also being advised to wear masks and avoid public gatherings. China says 17 people have now died from the new strain of the viral pneumonia, and more than 540 have been infected. To help calm growing fears, officials there are being far more open than they were during the SARS crisis and providing regular updates. Sasha Petrusik has more.
Please go and seek medical attention.
Chinese experts have been holding daily briefings here, and we're learning not only that number of cases has gone up, but we're seeing huge jumps every single day. Experts are warning that those are going to go up even further
as more people are tested, as in fact this whole effort within China comes out to try to stop it.
It is vital, clearly, that we understand the rate of human-to-human transmission. That will determine, frankly, the feasibility of control.
What's interesting about this, though, is that experts are also scrambling to try to figure out what this new virus is, what makes it tick, and how it can be stopped. For instance, they're saying that it is mutating very, very quickly. In other words, it's changing all the time, which means that even if they do figure out what they can do about it today, that may not be true tomorrow, or it may not be true in every single case.
What I think is really important to look for is evidence of human-to-human transmission occurring outside of Wuhan, either in one of the other big Chinese cities or internationally. I think that will be the next trigger point to really make us feel that this has become a bigger problem.
They're also finding that this particular virus shares a great deal of similarity with SARS, but it may not be quite as powerful, in other words, not quite as deadly. Finally, they're also learning where it may have come from. It seems that it may share another thing with SARS, which is that it came from the fruit bat, and that will tell the scientists something about what they might be able to do in order to stop this. But at the moment, it looks like most of the efforts are to try to find people who may be infected and to stop the spread, which is still in the early stages. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Beijing.
The federal government announced it will be helping the Canada Strong Fund created to support families of the Iran plane crash victims.
Through the Canada Strong campaign, almost $600,000 have already been raised so far to support the families of the victims of Flight PS 752. Today, I would like to announce that the Government of Canada will match donations to this fund up to $1.5 million.
Public Safety and Global Affairs Canada will be working with Canada Strong in order to make sure those affected get what they need. That includes travel. The government has partnered with Air Canada and Qatar Airways for families wishing to go to and from Iran. Mayor Tory says he hopes this announcement today will encourage more people to donate. Volkswagen has pleaded guilty to all of its Canadian charges regarding the emissions cheating scandal and must pay a fine of $196.5 million in 30 days, something that Eco-Justice says didn't go far enough.
These are serious health effects, and Volkswagen's getting a free ride because you don't see it coming out of the tailpipe, it's invisible, but it's around you. And for the judge to say that there's no identifiable community affected by this is frankly a failure of his imagination.
The German automaker and the Crown submitted an agreed statement of facts in the Toronto courtroom this morning. The automaker had wanted to enter a guilty plea to all 60 charges last month, but the case was delayed. The offenses relate to the company cheating on emissions tests. It admitted to secretly importing cars that violated polluting standards. The federal government charged the auto giant with 58 infractions under the Environmental Protection Act. Volkswagen also faces 2 counts of providing misleading information. The almost $200 million payment from the company will be used to support environmental projects nationally. One bar owner has been hit with a $1,500 bill for a false fire alarm pulled by an angry customer. She hopes her story will help other business owners avoid ending up in the same situation. Nellie Nanowski has more.
The instructions are clear. Pull in case of fire. 2 months ago at the Old Nick on the Danforth, there wasn't a fire, but there was a fired up customer.
Some fellas came in here, they were intoxicated. My staff wouldn't serve them, so they got very irate about that and caused a big scene, left. Were banging on the windows.
Then Christine says one man opened the front door and reached for the alarm.
Pulled it and ran.
Out the door?
Yeah.
Okay. Her staff called 911, telling the operator it was a false alarm. But firefighters are required by law to show up. And they did. Just last week, she was hit with the bill.
There are fees associated with the response to certain aspects or certain criteria of false alarm.
They look like this, $477 per fire truck, for a maximum of $1,500. or 3 trucks, which is the bill Christine got.
It's pretty frustrating that I thought, we were doing everything we could by letting them know that it wasn't an emergency.
So what used to happen if one of these got pulled by mistake is you'd get a warning. But those warnings ended up costing the city tens of thousands of dollars. So the city changed the rules about 10 years ago.
Just in 2018, Toronto made nearly $6.7 million from false fire alarms. But there is a way to avoid the bill, and that's if you can prove that the fire alarm was pulled maliciously.
If you cause a false fire alarm, you're breaking the law.
Had Christine called the police to report the crime,
then I wouldn't have had a bill. And wasting the city's resources and police and fire is not at all something I want to do. I didn't want to incur more expense to the city for someone who's already gone.
But next time, she won't think twice about contacting the police. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
Barack Obama is coming to town tomorrow after the break. Imagine speaking on the same stage as him.
I just know that seeing him is just gonna, all the things that I feel like are barriers, I know my capacity is gonna expand the moment. My bandwidth is gonna grow just being in his presence.
I sit down with a local woman who's got the presidential task and is definitely up for that challenge next. The 44th President of the United States is speaking at the Metro Toronto Convention Center tomorrow. Barack Obama is the first guest in a series launched by the Economic Club of Canada and Global Institute for Conscious Economics. For every ticket sold, a free ticket has been given to a young leader. That's in part thanks to a local music entrepreneur who started the hashtag #CreateFate to encourage young leaders. Kiana Rooks Eastman is the founder of Sandbox Studios, and she shared with us how she created her own fate. This is exciting, this big event coming up. You are opening the door for 500 young people in our city to get to meet the man himself, Barack Obama. First of all, why are you doing this?
I'm really excited. Create Fate is partnering with the Economic Club of Canada and the Global Institute for Conscious Economics. And I met Rhiannon a year ago now. And
she runs the Economic Club of Canada.
Yeah, she's the president there. And I was one of the speakers that she had come in. And we just vibed. There was just such a chemistry. And one of the conversations that we had following that initial meeting was, you know, what can your sector do and my sector do combined to create new conversation, you know? So the idea was, you know, the economic club, you guys can cover the bill, and I'll go out and get whoever you need that you think is really cool that you would like to speak to.
And you guys aimed really high.
Super high. You know?
And it
Slam
worked.
dunk, exactly, yeah, you know. President Obama is just such a historical figure, living legend vibe, and so to start with him as a part of a four-part series conversation is such a blessing.
You're going to be on stage with Obama.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a chance to speak with Mr. President, what are you going to say to him?
You know what? Somebody asked me this question yesterday, Dwight, and I wanted to have this like profound answer. But you know, I remember the first inauguration parade for Barack Obama. My biggest fear was that he would be assassinated. All of the people who created history in our community aren't here. Right? Martin Luther King just celebrated, he would have been 91 today. You know, Malcolm, like all these people who did something so profound, you know, becoming.
We lost them all today.
They're not, so him being here, like I can't even really explain how important it is just for him to be alive. That it's not even about what I say to him or what he says to me, it's just the fact that he exists for me to say something to him. That is the most powerful moment, and I think that for me is what Create Fate is. That is my goal every day, is like, I just need to exist. Other people, you just need to exist in your purpose because somebody's waiting for you, you know? And so I don't have a super profound answer. I just know
that was pretty profound. That was pretty profound.
I just know that seeing him is just gonna, all the things that I feel like are barriers, I know my capacity is gonna expand the moment. My bandwidth is gonna grow just being in his presence.
Congratulations on your
Thank
success. And
Appreciate
thank
that.
you for creating a space where other people can also find
100%.
success, because that seems a big part of what you're trying to do.
And that I think is the reason why, I know that's the reason that I was chosen as the first, you know, global ambassador for the new economy. Like, you know, there isn't enough conversation in North America especially, but around the world now, of when do you have enough? You know, like, I have enough resources, I have enough money that I feel comfortable enough that if I do make extra money, I'd rather hire 4 unemployable young people than go and upgrade my car or go and upgrade my home. Like, in the new economy, we need to be thinking about what is the legacy piece and what can we do to help as many other people as possible with the resources that you have available to you. Whether that's just making lunch for somebody extra at your work that day that you notice doesn't eat lunch, or if that's you making an extra $10,000 a day and deciding that you're gonna send 7 people to school. You always have the ability to do something with what you have, and that's thinking about how all of the things work together in your life so that you're impacting the rest of the world. And you know, that's what we do at Sandbox. That's what I do every single day as a human, and I'm just excited to encourage in other people with resources to do that as well. And that's why we have the 1-to-1 ratio at the lunch with Obama. It's about, if you have something and you can do it, just give it away.
I think the Economic Club really needs a voice like you speaking to
Thank
some
you.
of those economic leaders in our
Yes.
country. So thank you.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
I appreciate
Congratulations.
it. Thank you. Thank you.
He is an educator, and now he's also the newest member of the Toronto Police Services Board.
Well, I think my experience working with young people in community allows me to have a voice to help sort of bridge the gap between community and police. And I look forward to working with the board and the service.
Ainsworth Morgan was sworn in this afternoon as the newest board member. He's the principal of Pelmo Park Public School and will now also serve 3 years on the police board. He grew up in Regent Park and went on to play in the CFL. He also serves on the board of the White Ribbon Campaign, an organization that engages men and boys in the prevention of gender-based violence. The police board says Morgan is a noted leader in education and the community. And Colette, when we were interviewing him at police headquarters today, he said, you know what, it is my daughter's 14th birthday. Could you wish her happy birthday? So Zara, happy 14th. You should be very proud of your dad on your 14th birthday. So.
Wow, what a great age, too. Happy birthday to Zara. And we've had some nice weather for her, for all of us as well, in terms of our temperatures being above seasonal and this pattern looking like it's going to hold for a little while. The sun, well, it kind of disappeared into the afternoon hours, but we had a lot of sunlight hours earlier in the day. This weekend is looking like it's going to be a bit slushy, but perhaps because of the mild temperatures, more of a rain event than a snow event for the lower Great Lakes. And How extended? Well, I looked all the way into the beginning of February, and the trend looks like temperatures above seasonal by a few degrees for daytime highs, but overnight lows running 5 to 7 degrees above seasonal, so that's even more significant. Our daytime highs today looked like this, and it was, a little bit cooler in southwestern Ontario, so we did better than London even, -2 there. Oshawa, 0. Toronto, unofficially the high at 1 degree. The current temperatures, we've dropped just below freezing at -1, and you factor those winds in, and they've been gusting quite a bit into the afternoon and early evening hours. -7 is what it feels like. Those winds are going to back off overnight tonight, so we will have a wind chill, but it won't be too bad, and those winds won't be very breezy tomorrow. There's a look at the satellite imagery and the cloud cover that's moved in. See that little light snow line well to the north of us? That is associated with this very broad system that we're going to be dealing with as we go into the weekend. So snow to the north, it's rain further towards the south, picking up more moisture from the Gulf, and then pulling far enough towards us that it's going to bring up the milder temperatures and mostly come in, like I say, it looks like as a liquid event in terms of rainfall Friday into the afternoon, later afternoon and evening for southwestern Ontario, and it will be overnight Friday into Saturday coming to us. Then likely some slushy wet snow on the backside of this, so it will be a bit of a mix. The track may change, so I tell you, I'm going to be watching this very carefully to make sure we're not going to see more significant accumulations. -4 tonight, 2 to 3 degrees tomorrow. Markups may be slightly cooler, but have a look at that trend in terms of those temperatures. You cannot beat these for getting into late January, Dwight.
Cannot. Those are some nice numbers. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
He was 1/6 of Monty Python. Today, the comedy world is mourning the loss of Terry Jones.
Now you listen here. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. Now go away. What makes you think?
We look back on his life and career after the break. One of the masterminds behind the legendary British comedy troupe Monty Python's Flying Circus has died. Actor, writer, and director Terry Jones was 77. He had been diagnosed with a rare form of dementia in 2015. Eli Glasner takes a look back at his remarkable career and his comic legacy.
Born in Wales, Terry Jones was many things. The screeching mother of the not Messiah, Brian.
Now you listen here. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
A man intimidated by the Hell's Grannies.
Yeah, sometimes there's 3 or 4 of them. It's not even safe to go out down to the shops anymore.
And the purveyor of the chocolate treat, the Crunchy Frog.
Well, don't you even take the bones out? If we took the bones out, it wouldn't be crunchy, would it?
But more than that, Jones was part of the creative brain trust that introduced the world to the TV show Monty Python's Flying Circus. Jones first met Michael Palin while at Oxford University. Together with John Cleese, Eric Idle, and the others, they turned British society on its head. It was smart, satirical, frequently absurd, and well, just listen to the general.
Right, stop that. It's silly. Very silly indeed. Started off as a nice little idea about old ladies attacking young men, but now it's just got silly.
But behind the scenes, Jones was developing a taste for directing. When the TV show ended, he helped the Pythons jump to the big screen with films he directed, such as the medieval farce The Holy Grail.
We thank thee, Lord, that in thy mercy... Come on, then. What?
Then there was The Life of Brian, a film so controversial it was banned in Jones' own hometown.
You're all different. Yes, we are all different.
I'm not.
And of course, Monty Python's Meaning of Life, which included Jones in this big part.
Good afternoon, sir, and how are we today?
Better.
Better?
Better get a bucket. I'm going to throw up.
Jones' good friend Michael Palin called him a Renaissance man, and with good reason. Not satisfied with just directing and performing, Jones branched out to writing. He published children's books and books on the Middle Ages. A man of strong opinions, he looked to the past to make sense of the present.
I found it easier to see what was happening, I think, 600 years ago than I do what's happening now in the world today.
In recent years, Terry Jones joined the Pythons for a live theater tour. Today, from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to John Oliver and John Cleese, the world stopped to pay tribute to the comedic creator who died at the age of 77. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
Colette will be back after the break with a final look at our forecast. Stay with us. So with the 15 to 20 centimeters we got on the weekend, I did the sidewalk, I did some walkways, but the driveway, I did not do the driveway. I'm hoping with these temps, like we've been off-roading it, driving onto the driveway, and I'm hoping that with these temps that I may not have to do it and it'll just melt.
You know what's nice about these temperatures, just a little bit above freezing, a little bit above seasonal, but just a little above freezing is that, yeah, it's gradual.
A little bit of runoff, yeah.
So we won't see so much flooding concerns and things like that,
good point,
although
yeah.
some rain this weekend could pose a bit of an issue. But it makes it gradual for your driveway, Dwight, so you may have that for a little while.
Oh, really?
Is what I'm saying. It may take some time to get rid of that. You might have to get out there with the shovel. We'll see. Do we have time? If we do, for our board here, overnight tonight, -4, your overnight low, feeling like -8. And then tomorrow afternoon, here we go, 2 degrees. Yes, not the kind of sunshine we had today. We'll see a little more cloud cover, but also not the winds we had today. So those winds will back off for us. As for the system this weekend, I do just want to come back to that for a second, Dwight. It's looking like mostly a rain event for the lower Great Lakes, but tomorrow we'll have a better read from the next model runs.
Figure it out. We'll have that for you tomorrow. That's it for us tonight. Thank you for joining us. Mike Weiss has you covered at 11 after the National.